My name is Jay Armstrong. I'm a recovered heroin addict and alcoholic. Uh, Here today to tell my story. I want to make it clear, anything I say is my own opinion based on my own experience, and I'm not here to give any kind of instructions on how to do anything, just to show people that it is possible to recover from addiction and to become a productive member of society. I was born in Independence, Kentucky. I was adopted. 2 weeks old was the date, although it was set up before I was born. So I never knew my biological mother and father. The thing about that is that it made me different than everybody else. I was one of the very few people that I knew that were adopted, so it kind of set me apart from my other classmates in like elementary school and stuff. So I felt different from very, very early age. My parents, my adopted parents, did the absolute best that they knew how, the best that they could. They took me to church. We went to a Hardline Southern Baptist church. The thing about a Hardline Southern Baptist church, or at least our church anyway, that's different than most churches is the altar call at the end. The way that a lot of churches do it is they say at the end of the service, come to the front if you want to be saved. We'll say a prayer with you and get you saved. But our church was different. Our church said that being saved was something that happened in your heart, and you would feel it, and then you come up at the end of a service, and tell the congregation about it. And they preached some pretty heavy fire and brimstone, punishment, wrathful God kind of stuff at that church, and I absolutely didn't want to endure that for eternity. So I did, everything that I thought I could to try to feel that change in my heart, and I never did. So that added to the feeling that I got from being adopted. I felt like my parents didn't want me. I felt like God didn't want me. I lived in fear a lot as a kid. Fear of being different, fear of being, called out for being different, and some other stuff that, just afraid. I felt afraid and different my whole life. The best way that I can describe that feeling is it's anxiety, and it's that same kind of anxiety like right before you get off your job. Say you got like 5 minutes left on the clock and you start watching that clock and you get that kind of anxious feeling in your chest. I felt like that all the time until I was about 12 years old, and a friend of mine introduced me to alcohol at one of his parents' parties, and we had some of the cinnamon schnapps in the little airplane bottles, and we drank a couple of those, and I very distinctly remember not feeling afraid anymore. I didn't feel different anymore. I felt like everyone else looked. I felt okay. And I said to my friend, like, I'm doing this every chance that I get. Now here's the thing about that. Growing up in a Hardline Southern Baptist church, there was no alcohol. My parents didn't drink. My parents' friends didn't drink. Some of my extended family drank. But mom and dad always told me that it was evil, that it was, something that we don't do. The other thing about the church that I grew up in is in a lot of TV shows and movies and stuff, you see Baptists portrayed in a light that on Sunday they're holier than thou, but the rest of the week they're like moonshining and beating on their wives and stuff. And that's not how my church was. The people in my church, from everything that I saw, lived the way that they said that people should live, and it I couldn't do it. It was like a level of perfection that I could never ever reach. So that was the other thing that added into that feeling of fear and being different. I also felt like I was less than, like I wasn't good enough, and I never would be. But every bit of that went away once I took a couple of drinks of alcohol that first time. And after being told that alcohol is evil and that drugs are evil, marijuana, all that stuff, I just realized that my family and my teachers, everybody had lied to me, that they wanted me to feel the way that I felt. And looking back, that's insane, but I was a child. I can't justify that line of thinking just by saying I was a child, but when you're a kid and you're afraid, you don't ask questions. When it seems like the world's against you, you invent conspiracy theories, and that's kind of what that was for me. A conspiracy theory. They wanted me to feel the way that I felt, and they didn't want me to feel better. and so they tried to get me away from alcohol. Now, the first time I drank, we drank schnapps, which is not, the hardest of hard liquor, but it is hard liquor. And I blacked out, and I wet myself in my sleep. And when I woke up the next day, it wasn't shame that I felt. It was, I need to do this again, and because I already felt as bad as I did previously. The thought that I had, though, was, I'm 12. Of course this happened. I shouldn't be drinking hard liquor. I should drink beer or something else. Oddly enough, the last time that I drank was actually on Halloween of 2005, and that night I blacked out and I wet myself, and it was exactly the same as when I was 12. Around that same time, no, let me back up just a little bit. I did really well in elementary school and in middle school because I was terrified not to. I did real well on some different standardized testing and some IQ tests, and I ended up in these gifted classes where people talked about my potential, which then and now I still look at as my ability to do as other people thought that I should. And anytime people would try to shame me into doing what they wanted me to do with that word potential. Why would you do this? You have so much potential. So I was doing really well in school until I discovered, alcohol. And then very shortly after that, I was introduced to marijuana because, the DARE officer and my parents had lied to me about alcohol. Clearly, they were also lying about marijuana. And these people that I just met that are smoking pot, they're all right. They don't seem like bad people. And so I smoked pot the first time, and I also felt better, just like I did when I drank. And I didn't do any of the crazy stuff that I was told would happen. I didn't immediately start stealing or become some dirty hippie or whatever the things that they were telling me at the time. But what it did do is it told me that my first thought that they were lying to me about drugs and alcohol was true. And so I would try anything that got put in front of me. Real early on, it was pain pills and nerve pills, LSD. I went down that road pretty hard for a while. But I started falling off in school because of that. I started skipping school. I was the first person at my middle school to be kicked off of the academic team for failing grades because I made it through all their testing and through the tryouts, but I didn't do any of the homework, and I was failing in all my classes. So things started getting rougher at home, and they knew something was wrong, but they didn't know what, and they didn't know how to help me, and I didn't know how to talk about how I felt. We didn't talk about how we felt in my house, really. Excuse me. We talked about God. That was pretty much it. It was church. The church will help. But it didn't help me, So I pursued, the drugs and alcohol, and it was pretty lightweight at first, and it was a lot of fun at first, and it did everything I needed it to do for me, regardless of what it was. And even though I would still black out from time to time, the consequences weren't all that great. But I could talk to people. I could talk to strangers, and that's something that I couldn't do before. And it started getting more and more out of control when I was like 15. The first time somebody ever told me I was alcoholic, I was 14 years old. And they basically told me, like, at 14, we can't hang out with you anymore if you're going to be like this all the time. And I was like, well, you don't understand how I am when I'm not like this. This is the better alternative. What I was later to learn is that there's a thing that alcoholics have called the phenomenon of craving, which is once you start drinking, you can't control how much that you're going to drink. And that started getting worse. Alcoholism is a progressive disease. So at 16, I was hanging out with a lot of older people. And they came to me. They're probably 21 to 25, most of them. A lot of kids from Grateful Dead tour and kind of the hippie, like subculture kind of group of people, and a couple of guys whose apartment I hang out with in drank with regularly came to me and they were like, you can't drink here anymore, dude. You're too much of a liability. You're too crazy. You drank too much. And, you know, I basically, my reply was, so you're telling me I can't hang out? You know, because even then I would rather lose all my friends than stop drinking. And they said, no, that's not what we're saying, but we've been doing this. And they broke out some Dilaudid on me, which is hydromorphone hydrochloride. It's basically heroin in a pill form. And they were like, we've been shooting these, and we've been shooting heroin, and that's got to be better than the alcohol, the way that you act on alcohol. And that day I shot Dilaudid, and it took me to the exact same place that alcohol did, mentally, emotionally, and I felt okay. I felt, you know, again, I'm judging my insides by everybody else's outsides. I felt like they looked. I felt okay. Only I didn't get naked. I didn't fight anybody. I didn't pee my pants. I didn't go to jail. You know, I didn't do any of that crazy stuff that I had been doing when I was drinking. And not only had I been doing when I was drinking, but what was becoming the more frequent consequences of my drinking, the insanity. So you know, again, I said to myself, you know, I'm going to do this every chance that I get. And that's exactly what I did. So that day we did Dilaudid, and the next day we did heroin, and for the next 6 months I did it every single day. This is far before the epidemic hit Cincinnati. This is 1996. I was 16 years old. And heroin was a very, very dirty word at the time. You didn't talk about it. Even the other people that we ran around with, we kept it from them. You know, back then you didn't have a news story every day of someone who had wrecked a car or overdosed on heroin. It wasn't like that then. It's very different than it is now. About 6 months go by, and one day I couldn't come up with money. Now during this time we're running all kinds of stupid scams. We're shoplifting and returning it, and basically anything that we could do for money. Back then also, a lot of the return policies at the stores were different than they are now, and the heroin epidemic has shaped those return policies because of people like me and the people that I ran around with. And that was something that was not super easy to make amends for when I got sober. I have done that. I will say this about that. A store security manager's face, the look that they make when you tell them that you have stolen almost $10,000 worth of merchandise for their store that they didn't bust you for, and you give them your name and your address and tell them you want to pay it back, is priceless. It was just complete shock. But anyway, so basically a process began, and it's the same story over and over and over again. That first time that I got sick, I didn't know what it was. I just knew that I couldn't sleep, and I was super restless, and I'm kicking my legs, and my joints hurt. And so I called my friend up that I had been getting high with, and I'm like, hey man, this is how I feel. This is what's going on. I got all the stomach bile in my throat, and my joints hurt, and I feel terrible. You know, does this ever happen to you? And he was like, that's withdrawal, man. That's being dope sick. And so the next day, you know, as soon as I got up, or well, not even as soon as I got up, that's not accurate. As soon as the buses started running out of Independence, I got on a bus and I went downtown and did what I had to do and got well. And I don't have a time frame for how long it was for the first time I tried a detox, but I do know that I didn't say anything to my family about it until I was 18 and old enough to go to the Methadone clinic in Indiana. Mom and Dad knew something was wrong, and they had put me out of their house several times because I would take stuff from them, because I would fight with them. You know, I became a monster. You know, it was not safe to have me in your house and leave your purse out. You know, people would walk around women would walk around in their own houses with their purse on their shoulder because I couldn't be trusted. I was this miracle. My adoptive mother couldn't have kids. She had some reproductive issues, and I was her miracle baby. It's not super easy to get an infant, you know, especially my parents didn't have a lot of money. They would probably never get a kid at all today because of their financial situation at the time, but things were different in 1979 than they are in 2016. But this miracle baby that my mother had been blessed with became this monster that she was terrified of. And with good reason. You know, I was unpredictable. The only thing that you knew for sure about me is that I would fight, or I would steal, or whatever I had to do to get money to get well, you know, to feed the monster that lived inside of me. So yeah, we started. So I asked them to take me to the methadone clinic, and she started taking me. I went there for about 9 months, and almost every time I saw my counselor or I saw the doctor there, they upped my dose. And I figured out very quickly that that particular clinic, which I'm not going to name, it operated almost exactly like drug dealer operates. They have absolutely no incentive to get me off of their product. Why would they turn down money that's coming in? You know, it's cash. It's not, at least at the time, I know that there are medical cards that pay for certain medical assisted drug treatment now, but back then they didn't at all, to the best of my knowledge. So it's an all cash business. Why are you going to try to drive your clientele away? So yeah, my dose went up constantly, never once went down. I was never told that there was a plan to get me off of it. And eventually I just went back to heroin because I thought it would be easier to detox from that than it would be the methadone. And that was at about 19. Now during this time, I have some pretty good jobs. My dad was a computer tech, and he took me to work with him a lot when I was younger, and because he couldn't afford a babysitter. And so I would go and I started out doing stuff like when we would install applications on a computer or on a network. He'd put the first disk in and he would start the install, and then I would do the rest. I would pull it out, put the next one in, hit the space bar, pull it out, put the next one in, hit the space bar. Do simple things like swap out keyboards, and then I'm swapping out memory, I'm swapping out video cards. But I learned at, you know, 8 and 9 years old how to build PCs, and so I got some very good jobs at like 18 and 19. I graduated from high school early. I graduated in 1997, and I started going to Antonelli College of Art and Design for photography. And during that time, my addiction got so bad that I left, and I went to San Francisco, and my plan was basically to just die out there. And it didn't work out. As you see, I'm still sitting here. But I went out there with the specific purpose to be homeless. Dope was a lot more accepted out there. And when I say dope, anytime I say dope, I mean heroin. It was a lot more accepted out there. It was a lot cheaper out there. It was easier to get. And so that's where I thought I wanted to be. That, and I had read On the Road by Jack Kerouac probably 20 times, and that made me think that San Francisco was where I needed to be. So when I came back, I started working in IT. You know, my dad gave me some references to some places. I worked at Cincinnati Bell Zoomtown. I worked at Children's Hospital. I did the Y2K updates at Children's Hospital. I was a IT mover at Procter & Gamble through IBM Global for a while. These are very good paying jobs for somebody who's 18, 19, 20 years old. During this time, I'm also shoplifting as soon as I get off work. During the day, I'm in a very corporate environment, making 14 to 18 an hour, depending on what job I was on. Shaking hands with doctors, and you know, these people in suits think that I'm this real smart, you know, just bright kid and very nice and helpful. And then as soon as I would leave there, I would go steal, and I would pawn stuff that I stole or return stuff that I stole, and shoot heroin, you know, and cocaine. You know, that was a thing for a while too, shooting cocaine. heroin was always number one. Heroin and alcohol, and it always flip-flopped back and forth between the two. Because I had that crazy thought when I first started drinking, you know, I'm just too young, my body's not mature enough to handle hard liquor. What I need to do is drink beer. And then when I'd have the same results from that, it's like, well, I need to leave it alone and just smoke pot and take pills and do heroin for a while. And so that's what I would do. So I would go 3 or 4 months just on the opiates and other substances, and then I would go 6, 7 weeks on alcohol, and then the consequences from that would get so bad that I couldn't drink anymore, and I would go back to the heroin. And that's how it played out for about 9 years. I was in and out of psych wards. Sometimes I would try to detox at home. Sometimes I would, you know, go tell the people at the hospital that I was going to kill myself, because they weren't set up for any kind of detox. And back then there wasn't a whole lot of, you know, there was Drogy in northern Kentucky, and that was the only place that I knew of, that and the Methadone clinic in Indiana. In 2001, I was 21 years old, and I caught my first felony possession charge. From that, it was possession of heroin and possession of a forced instrument charge. And I went to court, and I represented myself in court because I'm a genius, which that's sarcasm. But they offered me probation, and I took it. And now I have met a bunch of people who have told me, if you're staying sober for probation, you know, you're not going to stay sober. You got to do it for yourself. But here's the thing, I couldn't stay sober for probation. I couldn't do it. Let me back up a little farther. When I was 16, I also caught a possession of alcohol by a minor charge, and I had already burned up my first 2 juvenile diversions, which is in Ohio, I think they call it in lieu of conviction, where basically you do probation, and once you get off, you don't get, you know, your charges get taken off. And that's, I had this probation officer in northern Kentucky, and, you know, he tried to help me. My life is a list of people who tried to help me, but didn't know how, and I didn't know how to be helped. And not only that, but I didn't buy anything that they were trying to sell me psychologically, I guess, or philosophically. I just didn't buy it. I thought that they were all out to get me. They wanted me to be miserable. And I was. You know, the only comfort that I had was when I was so intoxicated that I couldn't function. And even eventually that stopped helping as much as it did. So while I'm on this juvenile probation, I actually dropped dirty for heroin on juvenile probation, and the probation officer was just floored. He had no idea. You know, he had never had a client fail a drug test with heroin, and this is late 96, maybe early 97. So what he did is he tried to get me treatment, and the closest place that there was a juvenile facility was Lexington, and they sent me down there, and I failed my entrance interview. They said that I was a danger to myself and others, and that they were not willing to accept liability, and they sent me home, to which he was not happy at all. Now, I had the same name as my grandfather. I'm the third. So during this time, I'm getting a ton of credit cards in his name, and just burning them up with cash. And that's how I made it to San Francisco the first time when I was 17. But so I ended up getting busted doing that, and I got put on house arrest. And you know, I'm drinking the whole. I got friends bringing me alcohol and weed and stuff, and I ran from that. And that's when I went to San Francisco the first time with the stolen credit cards. Stayed out there for about 2 weeks, and things got rough. You know, while I was there, I did crystal meth for the first time. Crystal meth is the only drug that I ever did and told myself and the people around me, I am never doing this again, and then actually really never did again. It was the most awful, but I couldn't stop doing it once I started. And I ended up at 17 years old by myself in San Francisco, blisters. The bottoms of my feet were just covered in blisters because I had been walking everywhere that I went and skateboarding everywhere that I went. And I'm strung out, and the thing about heroin and other opiates is they make you itch. Methamphetamine is a great motivator to scratch. So I had dug a hole in my shoulder that was pretty deep, and I just kept squeezing blood out of it because I kept thinking that there were spiders or something inside of me, and I had to get them out. And my shoulder was completely concaved in because I had pushed so much blood out of it. And so I went to the hospital in San Francisco, and they basically told me, "You're fine. Quit doing dope. Quit shooting meth. Get some sleep and you'll be okay." So what I did is I had my return plane ticket, and I basically walked almost all the way from San Francisco to Oakland, and then I got on the BART train. Take me to the airport. Got to the airport, exchanged my ticket. In Kansas City, I had an 8-hour layover. I'm by myself. I'm still high on meth. And I go to the bathroom there, and my urine was so dark that it looked like blood to me. It was a dark brown. And so I called 911, and I said, "Look, something's real wrong with me. I need help." And so they came and got me, and they took me to the hospital, and they put a catheter in me. And the doctor asked me, he said, "When's the last time that you ate?" And I said, "I don't know." And he's like, "When's the last time you've drank water or any juice or anything?" And I said, "It could have been days, dude. I have no idea." So they have me on this bed in the ER, and they bring in a phone, and it's a phone with a cord, like a landline phone. And they had found out who I was, found out that I had a juvenile pickup order on me for running for probation and being a runaway from home. And my mother is on the other end of the line crying and screaming, "Please come home. Why are you there? What are you doing?" Just terrified that her miracle baby that she wasn't supposed to get was not only a monster, because when I was a monster, there was salvation possible. But at this point, she's just afraid that I'm going to die. And she doesn't have any kind of hope for me at all. And she's just crying and screaming. And then a cop came in, and he escorted me to the airport, where I flew into Columbus, was met by airport security there, and they took me to the hospital from there. From there, I went and did a couple of weeks in the Canton County Jail in their juvenile floor. And I got put back on probation. Nothing really changed. They put me on a ankle bracelet for a couple of weeks. But that was really it. There were no deep-reaching, severe consequences for that. If there would have been, would anything be different? I doubt it. And I have a lot of what-ifs through my life. One of the things that I thought was going to save me when I was 17 is I went and I signed up to join the Marine Corps. And right before I was supposed to turn 18, right before I turned 18, I was at a concert, and someone fell on me and tore my ACL out and completely, and then partially tore my MCL. So I was no longer eligible to join the Marine Corps. And that's one of those things that I thought was going to save me. And what if? What if I had? Would things be different? Would things be better? I don't know. Would things be worse? Maybe. But had those consequences from, when I was a kid been worse than they were, I doubt it would have helped. The disease of addiction and the disease of alcoholism do not care about consequences in any way, shape, or form. So all the trouble that I got in between there and the time I was 21 was all real petty. Shoplifting, petty theft, AIs. I got a DUI in a U-Haul truck that I rented just to drive around, and just dumb stuff. I got like 30-something AIs the year that I turned 18. And so at 21, I guess it was, I got the first felony charges. And I got put on probation, and 2 weeks into probation, the probation officer drug tests me, and I tell her I'm going to fail. I'm a drug addict, can't stop. And she's like, "Look, we're going to get you some help, but I still need you to drop." So I drop, and I fail for heroin and cocaine and marijuana. And So she gets me evaluated by the people that do the drug addiction evaluations, and they say that I'm not really a drug addict, because I lied to them the whole time. Because I didn't want inpatient treatment. I didn't want to have to go away. I just wanted some outpatient treatment, maybe some counseling, even though the psychiatrists and counselors that I've been to previously didn't work. I didn't want to have to go away. And she tells me, you know, since you tell them that you're not a drug addict and you don't have a problem, if you drop again, you're going to be violated. So I just never went back. And you know, I tried to detox myself at my house, and it didn't work. I ended up real drunk, and I got into a fight with my dad, and it took a bunch of Kenton County and Independence police to get me into the car and to take me to jail, and they charged me with AI. It's all they charged me with, in disorderly conduct. And I get out the next morning, and I go home, and I slept for like 11 hours straight. And at midnight, or sometime between 10 p.m. and midnight, my PO came in, and my living room was filled with police officers when I woke up. I mean, from the back door to the front door, from the east wall to the west wall, it was, I don't know, there was probably 16 or 17 cops, because they were done with me. I'd given them so many problems. And that's the thing that drug addicts and alcoholics tend to think that the law is out to get them. And the law was never out to get me, but at a certain point, they had definitely had enough of me. And so they take me and they lock me up, and I go the next day for a revocation hearing. And the day before that, when I was trying to detox, I ended up real drunk. The next day when I went home, I'd been given some psych meds from my family doctor, and he prescribed me Elavil, and he prescribed me Librium, and he prescribed me Klonopin. And I had decided that I had had enough. I didn't want to go to prison. I didn't want to go away to long-term inpatient treatment. I just wanted to die. And so I took a bunch of pills. I took a ton of pills. I took a bunch of all of them, the whole bunch of them. And then I went and got some heroin. And you can't mix benzos, which are nerve pills, with opiates. It's super dangerous. It'll stop your heart. And I did that specifically. I wanted to die, and I was ready to follow through with the plan. I had always had a suicidal ideation. That's something that had never gone away from me ever since I was a kid, before I even had a reason to do it. But this time I had a plan, and I had the means to go through with the plan, and that's what I tried. And it was the Frisch's at 5th and Philly in Covington. I went into their bathroom after I had taken all the pills in the car, and I went into the bathroom to get high, to do the dope. And the last thing I remember is walking into the front door. I don't even remember fixing the dope. I just remember walking into the front door. And the next thing I know, it's close to an hour later, and I'm at the hospital with a bunch of crap down my throat and up my nose and IVs and all that. And my mother is standing over me crying her eyes out. Once again, this baby that she thought she would never have is dying. It's over. It's lights out. And back then, they didn't have Narcan in every ambulance. The cops didn't carry Narcan. You certainly couldn't go get it with or without a prescription at Kroger. This is 2001, and things were starting to get bad, but they aren't what they are now. By the time I woke up, they had time to identify me, get me into the ambulance, get me to the hospital, notify my next of kin. She left her work, which is like 25 minutes away from there, and she was standing over me when I woke up. That's how long I was out. They did have Narcan in the hospital, and that's what they gave me at the hospital. And as soon as I wake up, I know I'm screwed because I'm on probation. And I knew I had a needle, and I knew I had weed, and I knew I had those pills. Although they were prescribed to me, they weren't in the right containers. So as soon as I wake up, I'm immediately pulling the tubes out and yanking the IV out, and I'm trying to run. And the nurse stops me, and she starts screaming, "You can't leave, you can't leave." And a cop walked in, and he's like, "Look, I know things must be bad for you right now, so if you do what this doctor tells you, I'll file a criminal complaint and you won't go to jail today. And I, deal. So I lay in the bed and the doctor comes in and he said, if you can stay awake for 15 minutes, you can leave. And I stayed awake and he let me leave. And I don't even remember walking to the car. I just remember waking up the next day. And that's when my probation officer, took me to jail. And I went and I did that 3 years. And during that time, the whole time I was locked up, that's another thing I hear a lot of people say, that the time that you're sober or clean in jail doesn't count. But I was not sober or clean at all through jail. I was intoxicated almost the whole time. Mainly it was pills. It wasn't, heroin and alcohol all the time like it was on the street. When I got out, first thing I did was go cop. I went and I got alcohol that night and I went and got heroin the next day. Because warehousing a drug addict doesn't do anything unless there's some kind of treatment, some kind of change. If you can lock a heroin addict up for 20 years, and if there's no help given to that guy, the disease, it just progresses the whole time that they're locked up. And when they get out, basically all you've done is wasted a ton of taxpayer money to feed and house and take care of medically that particular drug addict, because the disease is still there and it's waiting, it's patient. So I immediately start using, the time frame is shaky to me, but it was probably, I got out in 2004 and it was close to a year that I used before the thoughts of killing myself became the operating thoughts that I had, like more so than I want to get high. I can't do it anymore. I can't imagine a life with or without the dope, with or without the alcohol. I can't do it. I'm done. But I didn't want to mess it up. I had seen a bunch of specials with people who had tried to kill themselves and ended up paralyzed or just disfigured. And you know what? My life's hard enough. I'm ugly enough. I don't need to be in a wheelchair with half my face blown off. So I went to the hospital yet again and told them I was going to kill myself yet again. And this time the doctor came in and he was like, do you think it might be the heroin addiction that's your problem? And I was like, hey man, you're the doctor. I don't know. I just know that I want to die. And if you guys can't help me, that's what I'm going to do. She sent me to a place in Falmouth, which was a 28-day program at the time. And I was just willing to try anything. And that doctor told me, he's like, look, son, people who start using heroin as young as you and continue as long as you never, ever get better, they always die. And that was comforting to me, But the rebel in me that hates authority was basically, I developed resentment right there, And I stayed sober for months just to show that doctor that I could, I think. But, there definitely was a I'll show you factor in that. They sent me to Falmouth, and I'm down there. I get out, and I'm doing everything that I'm told to do until I started feeling better, and I got comfortable. And here's the thing: in every single type of recovery that there is, whether it's the 12-step groups or the IOPs or whatever, there's stuff that you have to do. And they give you the instructions. It's extremely important to do all the instructions the way that they're intended, no matter what it is. I'm not here to push any kind of recovery in any way, shape, or form. But the philosophy that has helped me is just following instructions. So I got to a point where I had to start doing stuff that was uncomfortable, and I already felt better. So I stopped following directions. I started lying about it, The people that in my support network, hey, are you doing this? Hey, are you doing that? If I was supposed to do it, I would say yes. If I wasn't supposed to do it, I would say no. I started lying. And some time went by, and I drank. And the next day I woke up super hungover, and I went and bought heroin, and that made me feel better. And so right away I was completely filled with shame and remorse and wish that I hadn't done it, because I was happy clean for a while when I was doing what I was supposed to do. And I threw it all away. About 4 months went by, and on a Sunday night I got on my knees and asked this God that I wasn't sure that I believed in or even liked, if I did believe. I had no idea what I believed at that time. And I got on my knees and I just said, God, if you're there, whoever you are, please stop me from doing what I'm doing. The very next day I woke up, this is a Monday morning, about 10:30 in the morning. I go downtown and I cop dope. And I'm headed home, and as soon as we cross the river, we get pulled over, and they find the dope. And I looked up at the sky and I said, I met an ambulance, not a squad car. And they took me to jail, and I detoxed in jail. Somebody put up bond for me about a week later, and I got out and I started using immediately. I go to court, not dumb enough to represent myself the second time. And they told me they're looking at my record, and they said, you have an extreme problem with drugs and alcohol. Have you ever been to a long-term intense inpatient rehab? And I said no, and they said, we're going to send you one. And that's what they did. They sent me to a non-medical detox. I went through the non-medical detox. No Suboxone, no Valium, no Librium, no none of that other stuff. Not even Clonidine, which is a blood pressure medicine they like giving heroin addicts in the psych ward. Nothing. Non-medical detox. All they would give me is Imodium AD. And this is November 8th of 2005 is when I walked into this detox. Suboxone was approved by the FDA at the time, but it was extreme. I had never even heard of it at that point. So I go through the detox. I go through an 8-month inpatient treatment program, and then when I got out, I worked there for a couple of months. I've been sober ever since then. Life has not been peachy keen during that time. I've been in and out of relationships. I got married. I got divorced. I've been in and out of cars. I've been homeless a couple of times. Sober. Being homeless sober has not been the same as being homeless in active addiction. I haven't slept under any bridges, so to speak. I haven't slept in any alleyways. I haven't slept under trees unless I was camping on purpose. But I have had to sleep on people's couches because sometimes life shows up and it doesn't give you what you think you need or what you actually need to stay where you think you need to stay. But the one thing that I've done 100% perfect is I haven't drank and I haven't used. And so even, my worst day sleeping on a couch and sobriety is pretty good. I tore my ACL back out in sobriety. I didn't take any pain meds. I've broken fingers on both my hands. I broke toes on both my feet. I broke my orbital at a concert, and I've refused pain medicine the entire way. I broke 2 vertebrae in my back when I was a kid, and I didn't know it. And they started moving when I was about 30. So that's about 5 years into sobriety. They started moving. Degenerative disc disease had started. And I went to the doctor. I went to the Mayfield Spine Clinic, and all they wanted to do was push opiate narcotics on me, and I have refused them the whole way. I won't even take the Ultram or Ultracet or any of the non-narcotic pain medicine. Ibuprofen is all I'll take because I'm terrified of what will happen. So I get excuses from people who relapse sometimes. Well, I broke my foot and they gave me pain meds. Well, I broke my face. I had a vertebrae sliding down onto my spine. I've had wisdom teeth pulled. No narcotics at all. And so I've refused to give myself any excuses. When I go to the hospital, I tell them, I'm deathly allergic to opiate narcotics. I don't back down from that in any way, shape, or form. I've been absolutely crushed emotionally and spiritually in sobriety. I went through a really tough cut. I had a daughter. I have a daughter. Her mother and I split up, and there was a real ugly custody battle. And she kept her from me for 3 months, and she's drinking and using and taking my daughter, who is 2 years old, around other people who are dangerous and drinking and using, and I'm terrified for my little girl. But I didn't use, and I didn't drink, and I didn't go commit an act of violence. I didn't do any of that crazy stuff. I went to my support network, the people that I know in recovery, and asked them what they would do and what have they done in situations like this, and I continued to follow instructions. It hasn't all been bad. So thus far, it's been pretty boring and depressing. But it hasn't all been bad, because I've got to do a lot of cool stuff in sobriety also. I became a published author. Articles, not books, but wrote a couple articles for the Inquirer and in some recovery publications. I had some poetry published, which I knew as soon as I popped up, everybody watching this thought, I bet that guy writes poetry. Anyway, I had always had this dream of doing comedy my whole life. At 5 years sober, I started pursuing that, and it's gone way better than I ever expected it to. But like the accomplishments from it and whatnot, none of that matters. It's the fact that I had never had the courage to follow a dream prior to that. It took living a life of complete chaos and being on death's door forever before I just felt like I had nothing left to lose. So at 5 years sober, I started following a dream that I wish I had my whole life, and that's been pretty awesome. I really don't know what else to say. It's been a decade. Recovery is absolutely 100% possible for anybody who's willing to follow directions. My brand of recovery, not better than anybody else's brand of recovery. It's just whatever it is that you find, do it to the fullest. Don't take a little bit that you like from here and a little bit that you like from there. My decisions on what's best for me my entire life have led to absolute ruin. My best decisions, taking a little bit of things that I like from here and a little bit of things that I like from there, put a flat line on my heart. It literally killed me. Tore my mother's heart out. This miracle that she never thought she would have a child, never thought she'd be able to adopt a child, and she's had to watch me come back from overdoses multiple times. That's absolute torture. That's what my best thinking, regardless of where it comes from, whether it originates in my own head or just me choosing what I like here and what I like there and putting it together as this philosophy of life, tortures and destroys everyone around me. So whatever recovery that you find, just do that to the fullest. And I live a life that I don't deserve. I'm happy. I no longer feel like I'm ready to clock out. Like at the beginning of this, I said I spent my whole life feeling like that last 10 minutes before it's about to get off work. I don't feel like that anymore. I can just sit and be anywhere. I don't have to sit with my back to the door at every place that I go. I don't have to be terrified when I run into people that I haven't seen in a long time. I've killed a lot of brain cells, and I forget a lot of people, and I have forgotten a lot of people. But if there are people that I have wronged, now I have a process to deal with that when I run into them. I'm not terrified. It's just, what can I do to fix it? Completely my fault. I have no justification or rationalization or minimization of what I did to you. Just tell me what I can do to make it better, and I'll do that. And that's a freedom. I mean, the freedom that I have today is crazy. No one can cut me down. People can run their mouths about me all they want. But that doesn't change who I am. What other people think about me is not really any of my business anyway. It's their thoughts. It's not mine. I'm not perfect. screw up all the time, but I always stand willing to make it right, you know, and that's been a pretty good process for me. The freedom, the ability to face society, the ability to face audiences. You know, before I got sober, the only audiences I were ever in front of were all in courtrooms. You know, and all I ever got to say was yes sir, no sir, and guilty, and nobody ever laughed. And that's different now. And I wouldn't trade what I have now for the world. I wouldn't trade what I had to go through to get here. I wouldn't, not at all. Because everything that I've been through has made me who I am today, and it's got me with the people that I'm with today. And wouldn't trade it for anything. So if you're out there and you know, you're at that point, at that jumping off point where you're just ready to be done with life altogether, give it a shot. What they told me was come in, follow these directions, stay sober for 6 months, and at the end of it, if you still want to kill yourself, you can still do that. And that was the deal that I made, you know, early on. If this doesn't work, I'll just kill myself. And it did, though. And the thing about that they told me, they said, you have to follow all of these directions or it doesn't count. You know, that's the deal. You have to follow all of these directions or you haven't even tried it. You know, I mean, a lot of people that say that I've been in and out of recovery, and when I start further asking questions like, well, did you do this, did you do that? The answer is always no. They came around. You know, hanging out around hospitals doesn't make you a doctor. Hanging around police stations doesn't make you a cop. Hanging out around recovery doesn't make you in recovery. You have to actually do the work. But the work's there. There's help out there. And it's worth the absolute pain and anguish that it takes to get through that work. It's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. It's extremely painful. But it's also extremely worth it.